just because I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time to edit it or anything like that. I wanted to just give you a quick update on my travels, what's going on, and what we plan to do here. I'm in Kiev at the moment. We've been traveling around Europe for the last week, doing some stories on different stories, different things. And now we got a chance to just make a quick trip over to Ukraine. I haven't been here since January, so I wanted to come back and kind of see how things are progressing, meet with some old friends here and that sort of thing. Also got a chance to meet up with Dave Eubank and the Free Burma Rangers team. That's always a big plus. Those guys are amazing, and I love hanging around with them. So I'm going to be here traveling with them. We're going to go down to the front lines, and we'll be doing some other interesting humanitarian aid type stuff while we're here. Now, let's talk about who's winning. Everybody has kind of forgotten about Ukraine and the United States, except for the fact that everybody's complaining about how much money we're spending on this country. The money that's being spent in Ukraine, I would say, first of all, I have to say I'm fundamentally against the United States spending lots of money overseas if we can avoid it, because we don't have it. We just don't have the money. We're putting it on a Chinese credit card for the most part, and that's not good. But we are going to be giving them more and more money as time goes on. We're to the point now where we've got enough sunk costs in this conflict that if we stop now, we just negate all of the billions that we've already given to Ukraine. And we have gotten some benefits out of that. One of them being, we've learned a lot about the Russian capabilities. That was valuable. The other thing is that we've degraded the Russian military quite a bit. That's valuable. So I guess you couldn't say that if we stopped giving money now that we would have gotten no benefit out of it. But if we don't lead the world in this, somebody is going to lead the world in this, and it's not going to be the United States. So the real question is, are you for or against the United States taking a leadership role in the global affairs? Now, there's a lot of corruption that swirls around this conflict, and most of that, I would say, comes from the United States side. When we talk about corruption in Ukraine, really what most people are talking about is corruption on the part of Joe Biden, and I don't think anybody with half a brain can argue with the fact that everything the Bidens have done regarding Ukraine has a self-serving benefit in one way, shape, or form. So I'm doing a live, but you can you can go by. So obviously that's an issue, and the problem I have with the way that it gets presented in the United States by conservatives and Republicans is that we're so tribal that it's like, well, if the United States government run by Joe Biden does anything, we have to, by definition, saying that he will even possibly. Let's see if I get a better signal over here. Okay, here we are. I think I'm back. I was saying I'm not sure that Joe Biden necessarily has pure motives in what the decisions he's made here in Ukraine, and I wouldn't presume that he does, because again, there is a lot of corruption that has swirled around the whole conflict here. But I think it's a mistake to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is it possible that America could be doing some good for the global order and even for Americans by spending the money that they're spending here? Now, keep in mind, it sounds like a lot of money has been spent in Ukraine. You're hearing these hundreds of billions of dollars bandied about, and it's not that much. The vast majority of the money that's being allocated for Ukraine, when you hear that, is not actually going to Ukraine. It's going to our allies in NATO to try to talk them into getting rid of old Soviet era armaments and go buy American armaments. So we're giving them loan guarantees. It's going to support U.S. troops in Poland and Hungary and other places in the NATO realm. It's going, their pledges to Ukraine for future years. So they haven't been spent yet. That money hasn't been given yet, but it's all part of those packages. When you boil down exactly what Ukraine has received since the war began back in the beginning of 2022, so now coming on is more than a year and a half. You're talking about 24 billion or so in cash, about 40 billion in equipment that's been given to them by the United States, and about 3 billion in humanitarian aid. That's the most recent numbers that I could find from unbiased sources. And so it's not hundreds of billions, but even you look at what the military has given, $40 billion, it's a lot of money, but that, is in the context of the U.S. military's budget. Does anybody know what the U.S. military budget is every year? Raise your hand. Somebody give me a quote. Give me a comment. What is the U.S. military's budget every year? Again, we've given about 42 billion of the U.S. military's equipment and ammunition to Ukraine in the last year and a half. So let's say that about 30 billion of that is more, in 1 year's budget. How much of the U.S. military's budget is it? Well, it's about $1 trillion now. Okay, so over 900 billion. So out of 900 billion, the U.S. military diverted about 30 billion of that last year to Ukraine to help them fight this war. That's a pretty small number in the greater scheme of things. And so it's not the hundreds and hundreds of billions, but even if it was, you're still talking about, if it was $200 billion the United States had given to Ukraine, you're still talking about 20% more or less of the total budget of the U.S. Pentagon in 1 year. Only 20%. So it hasn't been that much, but even if it was, I would argue that there are some serious benefits to America by us doing that. Number one, we've degraded the capacity and the capability of the Russian military by 50%, some say. And number two, we have been learning so much about our own capabilities vis-a-vis the Russian military that it will help guide us in the way that we develop our military technology and strategy going forward. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And so there is some value to that. And I mean, to say nothing of the moral value of standing up for somebody who has been attacked unjustly. And this is where we get into the thing that really bothers me. If you're out there and you're one of those people that somehow, through the reading that you've done, thinks that Ukraine deserves to have been attacked. If you think Ukraine deserves what it's getting, then please leave and don't come back to my channel, because I'm tired of arguing that point. There is no case that you can make morally for what I'm seeing over here, and that is women and children being bombed on a daily basis, innocent people having their homes and their lives destroyed, and who had nothing to do with politics or anything else. These are not Nazis. They're not, are they corrupt? If you want to talk about corruption, let's talk about Joe Biden. Let's talk about the United States government. Sure, I've seen corruption here in Ukraine. There is some corruption. It's low level, the stuff that I've seen. It's, people bribing the city officials in their little burg so that they can have a yard sale without a permit. It's stuff like that. That's the kind of corruption that is, everyday kind of stuff that happens over here. And that sort of thing probably doesn't happen very much in the United States, but the high-level corruption, the government's shunting billions of dollars here and there for their own political benefit, the corruption of the government stealing my money at the point of a gun in the form of taxes and using that money to try to buy votes in the United States by social welfare programs that they hand out to people who have not earned it. That is the corruption that concerns me, and there's a whole lot more of that in the United States than there is over here. So let's just stop talking about how corrupt Ukraine is, and let's start talking about the United States. With that in mind, Ukrainians are doing quite well. They are moving on with their lives. As we've been here, had a couple of missile warnings, where the alarm goes off and warns people that there's an incoming missile, and people just basically ignore it. They just go on about their business. That happened this morning, and while we were sitting here in the front yard, we saw a missile go by up above over our heads, and 3 Patriot missiles, Ukrainians fired and took down that Russian missile before it could do any damage. More than 90% of the Russian missiles and drones that are sent at Ukraine are being intercepted, especially when they're over large populated areas like Kyiv and other places like that. Now, the smaller the town, the fewer chances that that's going to be the case, and the more chances that civilians are going to get killed. And for that reason, Russia has been targeting more smaller towns lately. Yeah, it's actually 850 billion goes to the military industrial complex annually. That was a couple years ago. This year's budget that they just asked Congress for, was just right at $1 trillion. It was right under 990 billion, something like that. So yes, 850 billion is a lot of money. And if they're spending 30 billion of that in a year here in Ukraine, I would argue that there is some value to that, even though I am fundamentally against giving money to other countries that we don't have, because we're borrowing most of that money, and that's never a good financial case. But from a geopolitical sense, there is a reason to do it. Now, I'm going to have to take off here pretty quick, so I just wanted to do a quick update. We're here in Kyiv. We're going to be downtown today. We'll be going on Newsmax and other places, doing some live broadcasting. And so I hope that you'll stay tuned. And thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton. See you later.